Have you ever seen something so devastating that you can't get it out of your mind? Today, I'm going to tell you about Stella, a dog who was found in such terrible conditions that even the bravest people felt fear when hearing about him. His skin was burned, his body destroyed, and many thought he wouldn't survive even one night. But what happened next defied all expectations and reminded us that the will to live is more powerful than any pain. Get ready, because this story will leave you speechless. Stella was found in the middle of the road, an absolutely pitiful sight that no one should ever have to witness. He wasn't simply an injured dog. He was a creature that had survived something so horrible it seemed pulled from the worst nightmares. He carried the scars of a terrible ordeal that had left him completely burned and mutilated, as if his own flesh had melted under infernal heat. His appearance was so shocking that even he himself, if he could have seen himself in a mirror, probably wouldn't have recognized himself. The simple mention of Stella's condition caused fear in the hearts of those who heard about him. The distressing image persisted in many people's minds, causing even sleepless nights for those who had seen the photographs or heard the details of his state. This became evident in the flood of worried messages that filled the inbox. People from everywhere expressed their horror, their sadness, but also their hope that something could be done to help this poor being who had suffered so much. When Stella finally reached the hands of those who could help him, a process began that would require not only medical skill, but also an enormous dose of compassion and patience. Stella underwent an extremely careful procedure. His pain was eased with gentle sedation, allowing the veterinarians to take the first crucial step, cleaning his burned skin. This wasn't a simple process. Every inch of damaged skin had to be treated with maximum delicacy, removing dead tissue while protecting any living cells that could help in his recovery. After the anesthesia, Stella trembled uncontrollably. His body, already weakened by the trauma, struggled to recover from the effects of the medications. But he was alive. He was breathing, and that, in that moment, was all that mattered. He was on the road to recovery, though that road would be long, painful, and full of uncertainty. The extent of the burns was truly devastating. Almost half of his body had been affected by fire or whatever had caused those terrible injuries. His head was burned, his eyes were damaged, and he could barely see, and his paws, which were once vigorous and strong, were now mutilated and painful. Looking at him was to confront the worst face of cruelty, whether accidental or intentional. But looking at Stella was also to see something else, an incredible fighting spirit. Despite all adversities, despite the unbearable pain he must have been feeling, Stella demonstrated a will to live that left everyone caring for him astonished. He clung to life with an unshakable determination. And most remarkable of all is that even in his darkest moments, when the pain must have been almost unbearable, Stella occasionally gathered enough strength to wag his tail. It was a small gesture, barely a weak movement, but it spoke volumes about his indomitable spirit. It was as if he was saying, "I'm still here, I'm still fighting, I'm not going to give up." Days turned into weeks, and slowly, very slowly, Stella's condition began to improve. It wasn't dramatic progress. There were no moments of instant miraculous recovery, but day after day, change after change, his body began to respond to treatment. His skin began to regenerate, forming new cells that replaced the dead and burned tissue. His eyes, which had been clouded by trauma and infection, began to gradually clear, allowing him to see the world around him with greater clarity. Stella started eating again, something that seemed impossible in the first days when the pain was so intense he couldn't even think about food. His fragile body began to gain shape. The muscles that had atrophied during his terrible experience began to develop again. Although burns still marked his fur, although scars were evident on every part of his body, Stella achieved something extraordinary. He began to walk again. At first, it was barely a hesitant movement, limping significantly because his paws were still healing. But he was doing it. He was standing. He was moving. He was demonstrating a remarkable will to persevere against all odds. And through all of this, his tail kept wagging, sometimes more strongly, sometimes barely a tremor, but always there, a constant sign of his indomitable spirit that refused to be broken by the trauma he had suffered. Day after day, the healing process continued. Each morning brought small improvements. Each week showed more visible progress. Stella's caregivers documented every step of his journey, sharing updates with all the people who had been following his story, praying for his recovery. And then day 100 arrived. A turning point emerged that no one had fully anticipated. The wounds that had previously marked his entire body began to heal remarkably. Stella had transformed into a true example of recovery, a living testimony to what veterinary medicine, love, and the will to live can achieve when combined. Gradually, he freed himself from his painful past. The shattered creature that had been found on that road no longer existed. In his place was a dog who, although carrying the physical scars of his terrible experience, had found a new chance at life. His resilience was now accompanied by a gentle and friendly disposition that surprised everyone. Despite everything he had suffered, Stella showed no aggression or fear toward humans. On the contrary, he sought their company, their affection, their love. The scars of his past were now just a reminder of how far he had come as he embraced his new life with a gratitude that was palpable in every interaction. The transformation was complete. Stella had undertaken a remarkable journey of healing and hope, and now he was ready for the next chapter of his life. And that chapter turned out to be more beautiful than anyone could have imagined. Stella found a permanent home, a new family who welcomed him with open arms and hearts full of love. Now, Stella enjoys a wonderful life in his new home, where he is treated like a true king. He has a soft bed to sleep in, delicious food to eat, and most importantly, he has people who love him unconditionally. He runs through the garden with the joy of a puppy, his tail always wagging, his eyes bright with happiness. The scars are still there, of course, permanent reminders of what he survived, but they no longer define who he is. Now he's simply Stella, a loved, valued, and happy dog. If Stella's story has touched your heart, if it has reminded you of the power of hope and the importance of never giving up, I invite you to subscribe to this channel. Here, we share stories of animals who have overcome the impossible, who teach us about resilience, love, and second chances. Hit the bell to receive notifications and not miss any inspiring story. Thank you for being part of this community that believes every life matters and every animal deserves a chance to be happy.